Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video I want to talk about how to develop emerging leaders at your company and what it looks like to truly be a leader at Self-Publishing School. So you've come to this point, you've got people on your team who are really great individual performers, and you said, hey, I see leadership potential in you. And in any fast-growing company, you know that leadership is in short supply, and especially at Self-Publishing School, as we grow, as we scale, as we hire, this is one of the bottlenecks that we've seen is, can someone transition from individual performer and top individual contributor to a good leader? And now, not always can this happen or should this happen? And so I think that's kind of a good place to start. And as we set the stage, it's not everyone can do it and not everyone should do it. And so I think there's kind of this mentality is oh, if I'm not rising in the ranks or kind of climbing the ladder, then I'm a failure as an individual contributor. And sometimes that's just not the case. I love the analogy is progressing in your career. A lot of times it's not climbing a ladder, but it actually looks more like climbing a rock wall. Okay, so sometimes you're going up, sometimes you're going sideways, sometimes you go down and around to go back up. Like most people's career progression, it's not linear and it's not one rung at a time. So just recognize that and know that not everyone has the skill set and maybe has the skill set yet to be a leader, to be a great leader, but also don't pressure your team to be that. And so that's why I think it's really important as we start this is have honest conversations with the people on your team and say, do you want to be a leader? Is this something that you care about? Is this a direction that you want to head? Do you see this being part of your future? And make sure that's clear, but also don't pressure them in this, right? And I'm kind of belaboring this point because I want to eradicate this feeling and this pressure and this all that, which is if you're not advancing, what are you doing? Right? And I think sometimes in some positions, some companies, all that, yeah, sure, it might be true, but you can be growing and you can stay in the position that you're in. So just really getting clear, does this person want to be a leader? And I want to give you kind of 4 things that I think are super important and what it means to be a leader at Self-Publishing School. And then maybe in seeing those or hearing those, that person or you, if you're the person watching this, you might say, hey, yeah, that's definitely for me, or hey, that's definitely not for me. And in which case we can adjust accordingly. And then you'll know, you can kind of have this version, if you're watching this video run a different company, you'll know this is what this looks like for my company. Is this something that you want to sign up for? So number 1, being a leader means that you work harder than every single person on your team. You're truly leading from the front. You're the first to get there, the last to leave. Pretty standard hours at Self-Publishing School is 40 to 45 plus hours per week. If you're a leader at the company, that probably means that you're going to be working 45 plus, maybe even 50 plus, maybe even more than that. So you're going to outwork everyone on your team. And there's no excuse for people on your team outworking you. So if you're taking time on vacation, if you're taking time off, if you're showing up late, leaving early, you're not setting a good standard for your team. And it's important that you work harder than every single person on your team. And that will be the expectation. So I expect the leaders at Self-Publishing School, I expect them to work hard. And I expect them to, hard work and continuous improvement. They're always working hard and they're always making things better. Number 2, you're not afraid to roll up your sleeves and dive in. And this is really important. So if you think that getting into a leadership position means that you can just delegate to people and then, hey, I've got someone who will do that, I've got someone who will do that, this is below me, you will not succeed in a leadership position at Self-Publishing School. And I argue that you're not going to succeed in a leadership position anywhere because leadership in a lot of ways is not being afraid to get your hands dirty, get in the weeds with your people when necessary. Now, you don't want to live there, but it is important that you know when to do that and that your team knows. And I know this is something I say to my team all the time is I'm not asking you to do something that I would not do or that in most cases that I haven't done. And there's just a totally different level of buy-in, totally different level of just camaraderie and respect for you as a leader when they know that. As they say, hey, you've done this before. And so you're not asking me to do something that you think is below you or that you haven't done or that you wouldn't do. And I just think in terms of being a true leader, leading from the front, servant leadership, whatever you want to call it, it all comes with not being afraid to roll up your sleeves, dive into the weeds with your team. Number 3, you live out the core values. Okay, so if this person that you're thinking about promoting or you who's thinking about jumping into a leadership position, if you don't live out the core values, it's not going to work, right? And as a leader, it's your responsibility to live out the core values and to set that standard for your team. And then 4th and finally, it's important for you to take responsibility and have a high level of self-awareness, especially around when you fail fast and fail forward. So fail fast, fail forward, fail often. That's one of the core values at Self-Publishing School. But as a leader, if and when you do fail or if and when you do fall short, You need to take feedback well from your team. You need to take responsibility and take ownership and really shield your team from those things. There's nothing worse than when things go well, you take the credit, and when things go poorly, you blame your team. As a leader, it should be the opposite. And so just know that that's going to happen in a leadership position, both from an accountability perspective, and you should lead from the front and set that standard for your team. So those are the 4 keys of what it truly means to be a leader at Self-Publishing School. So maybe you're watching this video and you're thinking about becoming a leader, or maybe you're watching this video on the flip side and you have someone in mind that you think you want them to be a leader. So ask those 4 questions, like, is that something that they're committed to? And is that something that you're committed to? And if so, then now we're ready to start the leadership development process. So if you've gotten to this place with someone on your team, it's your responsibility as a leader to do 3 things. Number 1 is to recognize this potential in them. So maybe you've had a conversation about this, or maybe you've just recognized this and you call this out to them. So that leads me to number 2, which is once you recognize it, let them know. So it's your responsibility to let them know, hey, I see leadership potential in you. I think that you could be one of the next emerging leaders on this team. I want to develop you. I want to help you grow. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to hold you accountable, all those things. But let them know that you see that in them, and then have a conversation about whether or not this is something that they might be interested in. Maybe you could send them this video. And then number 3, and this is most important, is you're responsible to give them the tools and help them develop and grow. All right, you might think, oh, it's their responsibility to figure out where they should grow. No, it's your responsibility to help them find the areas that they want to grow and make sure that they have the resources, that they have the training, that they have the books, all those things. And so make sure that we are investing and we're in developing that person to develop as a leader. One of the best places to start with that is the individual development plan, okay? I've got a different video all about how to create an individual development plan for anyone on your team. But just know, if you're creating an individual development plan for someone on your team who is a leader or an emerging leader, that's going to look different. Because when I'm doing an individual development plan for an individual contributor, it's all focused on, hey, here are the skill sets to either do your role at a higher level or to grow into a higher level of that role. But when I'm doing this for an emerging leader, it's a little bit half and half. So I say, here are the skill sets and traits specific to your role, but also here are the leadership skills that I see that you need to develop. And again, watch that video because I talk about, you need to identify activities that will help them develop as a leader, but then also training that will help them develop as a leader. But it's super important. This is where the rubber meets the road, is if you see that and you have that conversation, it might be time to revisit that individual development plan. Or if they're new to the team, it might be time to create that for the first time. But this is where we really focus, like, hey, what are the areas? Maybe it's communication. Maybe it's self-awareness. Maybe it's the ability to just lead as a whole. And so you can practice that and say, hey, I want you to take over some meetings for 4 weeks. And instead of me running them, you run it, right? And that's all a part of developing leaders on your team, giving them opportunities to fail fast, fail forward, but also giving them opportunities to grow skill set. And that starts with the individual development plan. Now, lastly, I want to leave you with this. So as a leader, you went through this whole process. You said, hey, this is a person that I want to develop. This is an emerging leader. Now they know, and I know what it looks like to be a great leader at Self-Publishing School. We've went through the individual development plan. We've laid the path, all those things. Now is where your work really begins. It's your responsibility to hold them accountable, to challenge them, and to give them the tools to grow, okay? Because leaders always get held to a higher standard. So you are probably an existing leader. If you're watching this video, you know that I hold you to a higher standard day in, day out. But also it's your responsibility to see them and to see this person for where they're going and to hold them accountable to that standard. So if I know someone who's an emerging leader at the company, we've had this conversation, well, I'm gonna be much quicker to say, hey, I need you to improve on this, and I'm gonna go ahead and start treating them like a leader. I'll say, hey, this is the standard, right? And for other people on the team, maybe that's okay, but I need you to raise that standard because you are an emerging leader. So I'm going to challenge those folks. I'm going to hold those people accountable. And again, just know, I already mentioned this at the top, like this is not for everyone. So maybe you start doing that and say, hey, I don't know if I really want to sign up for this. That's okay. Then we're both clear, but I'm going to start holding them accountable and challenging them at that standard even before they get into that position. So there you have it. That's how to recognize and how to develop great leaders and emerging leaders at your company, and also specifically what this looks like at Self-Publishing School. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe some of this was Self-Publishing School specific. It's like, oh, that's really interesting. I want to implement that in my company. Or what was your biggest takeaway from this video as a whole. So comment below, scroll below this video right now, take 2 minutes to comment. What was your biggest takeaway from this video? How can you implement this to develop the emerging leaders on your team? All right, seriously, take 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes right now, scroll below this video, leave a comment. As always, click like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, or subscribe to the 7 Figure Principles podcast if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.